Nostalgic throwbacks are nothing particularly new in the world of pop culture. Maybe even too often, it seems, we get reboots, reimaginings, and so on, that while on their own have the potential to be good, often come off as shallow corporate grabs at making an easy sum of money off of the wistful masses who will go, "Oh yeah, I remember that." Today's topic, however, focuses on an area of reboots that oft gets overlooked: continuations of beloved animated properties. Dissimilar to the likes of Friendship is Magic and DuckTales, continuations like this often aim not to transform the work totally, but simply pick up from where they left off, providing interesting new twists and turns while keeping the basic structure similar to how we remember it from so long ago. Continuations in live action, while a bit more tenuous in quality due to the real-life aging of its cast, is obviously at a bit of a disadvantage over animated continuations. Animated continuations have the luxury of resuming the status quo, as if almost nothing has happened between now and their last air date, or at the very least, nothing that would uproot the core concepts we know and love. This is where Nickelodeon comes in. Recently, two classic Nick shows got continuation specials dropped on Netflix: Rocko's Modern Life with a 45-minute special titled Static Cling, and Invader Zim with a feature-length film titled Enter the Florpus. All of the show's principal casts, as well as many of their original production team members, returned to give their full efforts for both of these entries, and it damn well shows, capturing the lively spirit of their original counterparts nigh perfectly, while still managing to seem as if they were made in today's day and age. But what strikes me as wonderful about both of these specials, aside from simply being more content for both of these shows that I grew up with and loved, is that they attempt in whatever small way they can to break the mold. Not so much that the underlying product becomes too far removed from the original to be considered the same series, mind you, but it does enough things different to really feel like they warranted their own returns. Too often you see reboots or retoolings of classic properties that feel almost flippant, dry, and uninspired. They exist purely for the sake of generating revenue, without really focusing too much on the idea of actually creating art. There's no real weight or purpose to them, and this is where both Static Cling and Florpus, however, truly shine. They justify their place in the wider context of these beloved cultural touchstones. Let's start with Rocko, as it's the shorter of the two specials and thus will probably take a bit less time to discuss. Rocko's Modern Life was an animated series created for Nickelodeon by Joe Murray, which ran from September of 1993 to November of 1996. It follows the life of a shy Australian immigrant wallaby named Rocko, who deals with various situations throughout his mundane everyday life alongside his best friends Heifer and Filbert, as well as his dog Spunky. Next door to Rocko are a middle-aged couple of toads named Ed and Bev Bighead, the former of which can't stand Rocko, and the latter of which loves him to sometimes even uncomfortable extents. The Netflix special picks up directly after the events of what Murray considers the series' finale, an episode titled Future Schlock. Rocko and his friends return to O-Town after 20 long years of being trapped in space, and find that much about their beloved town and the people in it has changed since they last stepped foot there. Most egregious of all to Rocko, however, is the cancellation of his favorite television series, The Fatheads, which was developed by Ed and Bev's child, Ralph. The original Rocko series was noted for having quite a bit of biting commentary revolving around miscellaneous cultural and social issues of the 90s, and in bringing Rocko to 2019, we start to see that Static Cling is not all that lacking in these critical chops that so clearly defined its predecessor. Of course, there's the easy things to point out about how when Ed's corporation attempts to reboot the Fatheads in-house, they make a soulless CGI computer series without even attempting to contact the original creator, a clear jab at other similarly rebooted properties, which, considering modern Nickelodeon, is actually way more hilarious when you think about it. But arguably the most important and weighty focus of the special's many points toward the overall theme of change is necessary comes in the form of Ralph, or, as the special so eloquently points out to us, is now Rachel. Yes, indeed, the Bighead's son is actually their daughter. Having left home years ago to go on a trip of self-discovery, Rachel found somewhere along the way that she was more comfortable presenting and being seen as a woman. And the best thing about the narrative is just how well handled it is. Rocko and friends don't make that big of a deal out of Rachel's decisions, nor do they present her any trouble in referring to her the way she desires. Of course, that's not to say that Rachel receives no pushback for her trouble, as things are a lot less cut and dry with her father. Ed refuses to accept the amount of change happening to him all at once, which hits a breaking point when he sees Rachel, unable to reconcile the truth of his child's identity with the desire he has for Rachel to remain how he thinks she should be. This unfortunately mirrors the experiences of many trans people and their families or friends, and for for so many unwieldy internet denizens to insist Rocko has become too woke as a result of including this conflict is for all of those people to miss the point of this storyline, nigh Rocko itself. Rocko has always been about taking the piss out of real-life troubles and worries and providing a sincere answer or viewpoint to those discussions. And this is like any other type of those stories. The only difference is that now, in the age of slowly progressing tolerance for LGBT identities, Rocko is able to tell a story like this, whereas Murray would never have been able to get something like this aired in the 90s. And for those who insist this is all Netflix's fault, consider the fact that production began in 2016, wrapped in February of 2018, and only just recently got thrown onto Netflix after months of silence and inadequate coverage from Nickelodeon themselves. Murray himself stated that the special's themes are all about accepting changes, which made the inclusion of a trans character and having others accept that change feel natural as part of the story. Murray also even worked with the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation to help ensure that the representation present was respectful and accurate to transgender individuals, while also fitting in with the comedy of the show. That's not the work or decision of a purely corporate motivation, it's the work of somebody who truly cares and wants to convey something meaningful to his audience. And throughout the rest of the special, we're shown that message time and time again, whether it be through the reconciliation of Ed and his daughter as he learns to accept her for who she is and respect that, or in Rocko's willingness to accept that the eventual return of his favorite show isn't exactly the same as he remembers it being.
We can't live in the past. We can be grateful for it, but life isn't permanent. And if we don't embrace what's now, we miss out on a lot of the important stuff.
But... Okay. I guess change is okay.
Things change, and change is necessary, unstoppable, and can sometimes even be wonderful. It's a very Rocko message to convey, aided by the time and format it was released to, allowing it to reach important places that its 90s counterpart would never have been able to. And thus we arrive at our feature presentation, Invader Zim, Enter the Florpus. Invader Zim was an animated series created for Nickelodeon by comic artist Jonan Vasquez, which ran between March of 2001 to mid-2002, with several unreleased episodes taking until 2006 to properly air on television. The series centers around Zim, an alien and member of the imperialistic race known as the Urkin Empire, who are bent on universal conquest and whose hierarchy is entirely centered around their height. Zim is an overzealous narcissistic megalomaniac who was previously banished to the Urkin Food Court planet for nearly destroying Urk carelessly during their first invasion called Operation Impending Doom. When Zim learns of a second operation, he escapes from his exile and begs for the almighty Talus to assign him a planet. In an attempt to get rid of Zim, his leaders sent him on a fake secret mission to a mystery planet which they don't even think exists, which of course turns out to be the Earth. Zim is aided in his mission by an ineffective and erratic robot named Gur, and is opposed by his human classmate Dib, a young boy obsessed with the paranormal who is determined to expose Zim as an alien to the uncaring masses and thwart his plans for world domination. Apart from several double-length episodes, most are self-contained storylines that follow the basic outline of Zim's attempts to conquer the Earth and his subsequent struggle with Dib over the matter. In the movie, Enter the Florpus, we see a return to the show's world, poking fun at the amount of time that it's been cancelled for, showing us that Dib has remained holed away in his room waiting for Zim to return after he mysteriously disappeared for an indeterminate period of time. When Zim finally returns, he reveals that it was his intention to cause Dib to stagnate, but then in the privacy of his own home, realizes that he had forgotten what the true second phase of his plan was. In an attempt to calculate how long he has to remember his plan and enact it before his leaders arrive, he pulls power from the entire city to download and observe their current flight plans, upon which Zim finally discovers that the Tallest don't intend to come to Earth at all. Falling into a deep depression because of the lack of respect his leaders have for him, Zim allows Dib to presumably use his technology to hack his father's Peace Day conference and reveal Zim to the world. However, of course, this backfires when it's revealed that Zim tricked Dib into giving him the means to take full control of the Peace Day bracelet project himself, wherein he harnesses the power of the populace wearing them to teleport the Earth directly into the path of the Tallest's armada, thinking it will give them no choice but to visit him. While the tallest intend to destroy the planet once they get close enough to it, at the same time, a deadly vacuum in space called a Florpus hole opens up due to Zim's terrible plan and threatens to suck in all worlds around it, causing them to violently clash with alternate realities and be destroyed in the process. Dib and Gaz team up with the sentient ship left behind by fellow Urkin and enemy of Zim, Tak, and work to rescue their father and teleport Earth back to where it was before Zim's plan results in their annihilation, either via giant ship or giant Florpus. Needless to say, the movie, at least in my opinion, turned out fantastic, combining all of the things I loved about the original Zim with the finesse and production value of a feature-length animated film in 2019. The humor is just as on point as always, if not better. The color palettes and animation work are jaw-dropping, the returning voice cast provide nostalgic and stellarly energetic voice performances, especially Richard Horvitz's Zim.
You're ugly when you lie, Dib! I'm not lying! Then why are you ugly?
And the music by Kevin Manthei continues to be deliciously industrial and foreboding. What strikes me as even more impressive about the movie than its visual upgrade and charming performances, however, is the amount of oddly cathartic extensions of the main plot threads that it featured. While Enter the Florpus is by no means a definitively final entry in the Invader Zim series, it certainly includes many plot points which series fans have no doubt been clamoring to see come to pass for years now. Zim finally realizing that his leaders aren't coming for him, Dib and Gaz having more of an actual sibling chemistry with each other, more exploration of and focus on Dib's father, Professor Membrane in particular, the return of Tak, even if it was just her ship, and of course Zim actually managing, albeit briefly, to take over the entire Earth. Part of the comedic charm that resonated so strongly with the formulaic approach of the original series was that Zim was never completely safe, but he was also so blindly incompetent that it was safe to assume he'd never get much of anywhere. Enter the Florpus changes the status quo ever so slightly by having Zim remain as negligent and stupid as ever before, but with one key difference. He actually wins. At least for a little bit. Let me tell you, the scene where the Earth is teleported into space and the sky turns red as Zim cackles over the crumbling city, it was surprisingly effective in selling the idea that, oh wow, Zim is actually kind of threatening, huh? You tend to forget how conceptually terrifying somebody like Zim can be because of how consistently he manages to screw up at everything he does, but when he actually pulls it off, it becomes that much easier to empathize with and understand the fear and rejection Dib has been feeling from his friends and family all along. Speaking of the rejection Dib feels, it's a pretty major sticking point of the movie's plot. The way he interacts with his family, in particular, struck me as very unexpected, but also melds very well with the style of writing that the show has always had, knowing just how much to lean on the sincerely emotional without going so far as to no longer resemble itself. In particular, Professor Membrane's expression of pride towards Dib.
You don't have to prove anything. I'm always proud of you.
As well as Gaz's somewhat apologetic approach to the topic of her mistreatment of him.
'Cause making fun of you is no fun when you're this sad. You're my brother, man. I only torment you because I know you can handle it.
Both managed to provoke a sincere, if slight bit of genuine empathy from me, which isn't the type of emotion I expected to have while watching an Invader Zim movie. Even before Zim's evil plan kicks up, the amount of genuine connection Dib seemed to have with him earlier on during his depression seemed to speak volumes to me about their core character relationship. That despite their wealth of differences and animosity for each other, Zim and Dib are much more alike than they realize, and their potent rivalry almost always provides opportunities for them to grow as people, whether they take those chances or not. Rocko and Zim have both nailed this sense of familiarity and intrigue at the newly possible with their respective returns. For as many awful, cash-grabby, and passionless reboots that exist out there, it's easy to forget that not all of them fall under the same category. Reboots like Static Cling and Enter the Florpus, however, go to great lengths to prove by leaps and bounds that these types of projects are not creatively bankrupt or dead in the water before they even begin production. What makes a great reboot great is their ability to take what was already unique and lovable about its source material and build upon that foundation in new and exciting ways that weren't previously possible. Perhaps it was because the topic was too racy for the era, too hot for the 90s Nickelodeon to handle. Perhaps it was because, despite critical success, the ratings were just too low to warrant the budget and additional episodes needed to make a story like that work. But no matter the reason, the fact remains that a lot of our favorite properties from eras long past had other things to explore, other ideas to present, other messages to convey, and other stories to share that they never got the chance to. What Rocko and Zim mean for Reboots is the assurance that perhaps even if those stories end prematurely, they have the chance to come back at full force to explore new and interesting ideas in ways they were previously unable, creating not just timeless properties that we enjoy after the fact, but properties that can endure into our futures, rise again, and remind us just what we loved so much about them in the first place. And hey, hopefully that thing you love will get the chance to shine sometime too. After all, it could happen.